Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy.
Tim, get up, you lazy bum.
Sue's voice pierced through the fog of his hangover.
I'm heading to work. Try to do something productive today, will you?
The front door slammed shut, leaving Tim alone with his thoughts and the mess surrounding him. He groaned, rubbing his temples as he slowly sat up. The clock on the nightstand read 9:30 a.m., another day wasted. Tim stumbled to the kitchen, his bare feet sticking to the grimy linoleum floor. He opened the fridge, hoping to find something to ease his parched throat. The shelves were mostly bare, save for a few condiments and a carton of expired milk. With a sigh, he closed the fridge and noticed a crumpled $20 bill on the counter. Sue must have left it for groceries. Tim's eyes darted to the liquor store across the street, visible through the kitchen window. He hesitated for a moment, then grabbed the money and headed out the door. The bell chimed as Tim entered the store, the familiar smell of stale cigarettes and cheap booze greeting him. He made his way to the wine aisle, scanning the shelves for the best deal.
Back again, Tim?
The cashier asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Tim forced a smile.
Just picking up something for dinner tonight.
He handed over the $20 bill, receiving a few coins in change along with the brown paper bag containing his purchase. As he stepped back onto the sidewalk, guilt gnawed at his conscience. He knew Sue would be furious, but he couldn't bring himself to care. The rest of the day passed in a haze of daytime television and intermittent naps. Before Tim knew it, the sun was setting and he heard Sue's key in the lock. He quickly hid the empty wine bottle under the couch cushion and tried to look busy. Sue entered, her face etched with exhaustion from a long day at work. She glanced around the messy living room, her expression darkening. "Did you even leave the house today?" Tim shrugged, avoiding eye contact.
I cleaned up a bit."
Sue's eyes narrowed as she spotted the wine-stained glass on the coffee table. "You spent the grocery money on alcohol again, didn't you?"
"I was going to replace it,"
Tim mumbled, knowing how hollow his words sounded. Sue's patience snapped.
"That's it, Tim! I can't keep supporting us both while you sit around drinking all day. You need to find a job, any job!"
Tim flinched at her words, knowing she was right, but unwilling to admit it.
"I've been looking, Sue. Nobody's hiring."
"Bull," Sue spat. "I saw a help wanted sign at the gas station down the street. Go apply there tomorrow, or I swear I'll kick you out myself." Tim nodded meekly, knowing he had no choice but to comply. Sue stormed off to the bedroom, leaving him alone with his guilt and the lingering taste of cheap wine. The next morning, Tim forced himself out of bed early. He rummaged through his closet, trying to find something presentable to wear. Most of his clothes were wrinkled or stained, but he managed to cobble together an outfit that didn't look completely disheveled. As he approached the gas station, his stomach churned with anxiety. It had been years since he'd had a proper job interview, and his work history was spotty at best. The bell chimed as he entered, and a bored-looking teenager glanced up from behind the counter. "Help you?" the kid asked, barely looking up from his phone. Tim cleared his throat. Yeah, I saw the help wanted sign. Is the manager around?" The teenager jerked his thumb towards the back. "In the office?" Tim made his way to a small room behind the counter, knocking hesitantly on the open door. A middle-aged man with thinning hair looked up from a stack of papers. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone neutral. Tim straightened his posture, trying to project confidence he didn't feel.
"I'm here about the job opening."
The manager eyed him skeptically.
"You got any experience working in retail or customer service?"
Tim hesitated.
"Well, I worked at a grocery store about 5 years ago, and I did some temp work here and there."
The manager's expression didn't change.
"What have you been doing since then?"
Tim felt his face grow hot.
"I've been between jobs, taking care of some personal matters."
The manager sighed, leaning back in his chair.
"Look, I'll be straight with you. We need someone reliable who can show up on time and handle the register. Based on what you're telling me, I'm not sure you're the right fit.
Tim felt a wave of desperation wash over him.
Please, I really need this job. I'll work hard, I promise.
The manager shook his head.
I'm sorry, but we've had issues with employees with spotty work histories before. I can't take the risk.
Good luck with your job search. Tim trudged home, feeling defeated and worthless. He knew Sue would be furious when she found out he'd been rejected, but he couldn't bring himself to care. All he wanted was to crawl back into bed and forget about the world for a while. When Sue returned home that evening, Tim braced himself for the inevitable confrontation. She took one look at his dejected expression and sighed. "They didn't hire you, did they?" she asked, her voice a mixture of disappointment and resignation. Tim shook his head, unable to meet her gaze. "The manager said I wasn't a good fit." Sue ran a hand through her hair, frustration evident in every movement. "Tim, we can't go on like this. Our savings are almost gone, and I can't keep supporting both of us on my salary alone." Tim knew she was right, but he felt paralyzed by his own inadequacy. "I'll keep looking," he said weakly. Sue's eyes roamed the living room, taking in the piles of dirty laundry and empty takeout containers. Her gaze settled on Tim's rumpled clothes, and a look of determination crossed her face. "That's it," she declared. "We're getting rid of all these ratty old clothes. Maybe if you look more presentable, you'll have better luck finding a job." Before Tim could protest, Sue began gathering armfuls of his clothes and shoving them into garbage bags. He watched helplessly as years' worth of comfortable, familiar garments disappeared into the black plastic.
"But Sue," he stammered, "what am I supposed to wear now?"
Sue paused, considering. "I heard Monica's dress shop is hiring. Maybe we can kill two birds with one stone. Get you a job and a new wardrobe." Tim's eyes widened in disbelief.
"A dress shop? You can't be serious."
Sue fixed him with a steely gaze.
"At this point, Tim, you don't have much choice. Unless you want to end up on the street, you'll go down there tomorrow and apply."
Tim opened his mouth to argue, but thought better of it. He knew Sue was at her wit's end, and he couldn't blame her. With a heavy sigh, he nodded in agreement. The next morning, Tim found himself standing outside Monica's dress emporium, feeling utterly out of place. The window display featured mannequins in flowing summer dresses and elegant evening gowns. He took a deep breath and pushed open the door, a tinkling bell announcing his arrival. A tall, elegant woman with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun approached him. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice crisp and professional. Tim swallowed hard.
Yes, I heard you might be hiring?"
The woman, Monica, he assumed, looked him up and down, her expression unreadable. "We are in need of some additional help. Do you have any experience in retail?" Tim recounted his brief stint at the grocery store, trying to sound more competent than he felt. To his surprise, Monica nodded thoughtfully. "We could use someone to help with inventory and stocking," she mused. "Are you comfortable working with women's clothing?" Tim hesitated, then nodded. At this point, he was willing to do just about anything for a steady paycheck. Monica led him to a small office in the back of the store. She pulled out a stack of papers and placed them in front of Tim.
"If you're serious about the position, I'll need you to fill out these forms and sign our employee agreement."
Tim's hand shook slightly as he picked up the pen. He skimmed through the documents, his desperation overriding his usual caution. Without reading the fine print, he signed his name on the dotted line. Monica smiled, a hint of something unreadable in her eyes. "Excellent. You can start tomorrow. Be here at 9 a.m. sharp, and we'll get you set up with a uniform." As Tim left the shop, a mixture of relief and apprehension washed over him. He had a job. Finally. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped into something he didn't fully understand. The next morning, Tim arrived at the dress shop promptly at 9 a.m., his stomach churning with nervous energy. Monica greeted him with a professional smile and led him to the back room. "Now," she began, "as per our employee agreement, all staff must wear clothing from the store while on duty. It's important that we represent our products to our customers." Tim's brow furrowed in confusion. But this is a women's clothing store? Monica's smile didn't waver. That's correct. And as our agreement states, all employees must adhere to our dress code, regardless of gender. Tim's mouth went dry as the realization hit him. He'd signed the contract without reading it carefully, and now he was legally bound to wear women's clothing during his shifts. I can't, he stammered, his face flushing with embarrassment. Monica's expression hardened slightly. Mr. Thompson, you signed a binding agreement. If you're unwilling to comply with our policies, I'm afraid we'll have to terminate your employment immediately. And of course, inform your wife of your refusal to honor your commitments. Tim felt trapped. He couldn't face Sue if he lost this job on his first day. With a deep breath, he nodded reluctantly. Okay, what do I need to wear? Monica's smile returned as she led him to a rack of clothes. We'll start you off with something simple. A knee-length dress, stockings, and low heels. I'll have Sandra in cosmetics help you with some basic makeup. The next hour was a blur of unfamiliar sensations. Tim struggled into pantyhose for the first time, his fingers clumsy as he fastened the bra Monica had selected. The dress felt strange against his skin, the fabric softer and lighter than anything he was used to wearing. Sandra, a bubbly young woman with bright pink hair, approached him with a makeup bag. Don't worry, honey, she said, noticing his discomfort. We'll keep it natural for now. Just some foundation, a touch of blush, and a bit of mascara. As Tim looked at himself in the mirror, he barely recognized the person staring back at him. The dress hugged his body in unfamiliar ways, and the subtle makeup softened his features. He felt exposed and vulnerable, but also strangely intriguing. Monica appeared behind him, nodding approvingly. Much better. Now let's get you started on inventory. The day passed in a whirlwind of activity. Tim fumbled with the heels at first, but gradually found his balance. He focused on the task at hand, trying to ignore the curious glances from customers and the occasional giggle from his coworkers. By the time his shift ended, Tim's feet were aching, and his back was sore from the unfamiliar posture required by the heels. But as he changed back into his regular clothes, he felt a strange sense of accomplishment. He'd made it through the day despite his discomfort and embarrassment. As the weeks went by, Tim found himself settling into a routine. He grew more comfortable in the dresses and heels, and his makeup skills improved under Sandra's patient tutelage. To his surprise, he began to take pride in his appearance, enjoying the way the clothes made him feel graceful and polished. One day, as Tim was arranging a display of summer dresses, Monica approached him with a thoughtful expression. Tim, she said, I've been impressed with your progress. How would you feel about moving to the sales floor? Tim hesitated. Working with customers meant being more visible, more exposed. But he also felt a flutter of excitement at the prospect of a new challenge. I think I'd like that, he said, surprising himself with his enthusiasm. Monica smiled warmly. Excellent. We'll start you with some training next week. And I think it's time we updated your work wardrobe. Something a bit more fashion-forward, perhaps? Tim found himself nodding eagerly. That sounds great. Thank you, Monica. As he turned back to the display, Tim caught a glimpse of himself in a nearby mirror. The person looking back at him was so different from the disheveled, unemployed man he'd been just a few months ago. He stood taller, moved with more grace, and exuded a confidence he'd never felt before. At home, Sue had noticed the changes in her husband. At first, she'd been skeptical about his new job, but she couldn't deny the positive impact it had on their lives. Tim was more engaged, more helpful around the house, and seemed genuinely happier. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, Sue broached the subject. You seem to be really enjoying your job at the dress shop, she observed. Tim felt a moment of panic, wondering if she'd somehow discovered the full extent of his transformation at work. But her expression was open and curious, not accusatory. I am, he admitted. It's been eye-opening. I never thought I'd enjoy working in fashion, but there's something really satisfying about helping people find clothes that make them feel good about themselves.
Sue reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you, Tim. You've come so far." Tim felt a lump form in his throat. He knew he should tell Sue the whole truth about his job, but he was afraid of how she might react. For now, he decided to keep that part of his life separate. As the months passed, Tim's confidence and skills grew. He became one of the top salespeople at Monica's dress emporium, with a loyal clientele who appreciated his eye for fashion and his ability to make them feel comfortable and beautiful. One day, as Tim was helping a customer find the perfect dress for a wedding, he overheard a conversation between Monica and another employee. "We need to expand," Monica was saying. "I'm thinking of opening a second location across town." Tim's ears perked up. He'd been feeling ready for a new challenge, and the idea of helping to launch a new store excited him. After the customer left, Tim approached Monica. "I couldn't help overhearing," he began. "If you're looking for someone to help with the new store, I'd love to be considered." Monica studied him for a moment, then smiled. "I was hoping you'd be interested. You've become an invaluable part of our team, Tim." "How would you feel about taking on a management role at the new location?" Tim felt a surge of pride and excitement. "I'd be honored," he said, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. Over the next few months, Tim threw himself into preparations for the new store. He worked closely with Monica, learning the ins and outs of running a business. He helped with everything from selecting the location to choosing the initial inventory. As the grand opening approached, Tim found himself working longer hours, often coming home well after Sue had gone to bed. He felt guilty about the deception, but he was also exhilarated by the challenge and the sense of purpose he'd found. The night before the new store was set to open, Tim stood in front of the full-length mirror in the employee changing room. He smoothed down the front of his elegant black dress, adjusting the pearl necklace that completed the outfit. His makeup was flawless, and his hair, now grown out and styled in a chic bob, framed his face perfectly. For a moment, he barely recognized himself. Gone was the scruffy, unemployed man who had walked into Monica's shop over a year ago. In his place stood a confident, stylish woman who was about to become the manager of her own store. As he gazed at his reflection, Tim realized that somewhere along the way, his job had become more than just a means to pay the bills. It had become a part of who he was, a source of pride and fulfillment he'd never expected to find. The grand opening was a resounding success. Tim moved through the crowded store with ease, greeting customers, offering styling advice, and managing his team with natural authority. As the last customer left and the doors were locked, Monica approached him with a broad smile. "Congratulations, Tim," she said, pulling him into a warm hug. "You've done an incredible job. I couldn't be prouder." Tim felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. "Thank you, Monica, for everything. You gave me a chance when no one else would, and you've helped me discover a side of myself I never knew existed." Monica squeezed his hand. "You did all the hard work, my dear. You've come so far, and I can't wait to see where you go from here." As Tim drove home that night, still buzzing from the excitement of the day, he knew he had a decision to make. He couldn't keep living a double life forever. It was time to be honest with Sue about who he had become. He pulled into the driveway, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. As he walked through the front door, still dressed in his work attire, he heard Sue gasp. "Tim?" she said, her voice a mixture of confusion and shock. What is this?" Tim took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "Sue, we need to talk. There's something I should have told you a long time ago." Over the next few hours, Tim poured out the whole story, how the job at Monica's had started as a desperate attempt to avoid homelessness, but had turned into a journey of self-discovery. He explained how wearing women's clothing had initially been uncomfortable, but had gradually felt more and more natural. Sue listened in stunned silence, her expressions ranging from disbelief to anger to concern. When Tim finally finished speaking, the room fell into a heavy silence. "I don't know what to say," Sue finally whispered. This is a lot to take in. Tim nodded, fighting back tears. I know, and I'm so sorry for keeping this from you. I was afraid of how you'd react, but I realize now that was unfair to you. You deserved to know the truth. Sue stood up and paced the room, her brow furrowed in thought. I need some time, she said at last. This isn't something I can process overnight. Tim nodded, his heart heavy. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll stay at a hotel for a few days if you want some space. Sue shook her head. No, you don't have to do that. This is your home too. I need to think. The next few weeks were tense and uncomfortable. Sue and Tim tiptoed around each other, unsure of how to navigate this new reality. Tim continued to work at the store, but he felt a constant weight of guilt and uncertainty. One evening, as Tim sat on the couch, absently flipping through a fashion magazine, Sue sat down beside him. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, her voice steady. And I've realized something. The person you've become, this confident, successful version of yourself, that's the person I fell in love with all those years ago. The potential was always there, but you'd lost your way for a while. Tim looked up, hardly daring to hope. What are you saying? Sue took his hand, squeezing it gently. I'm saying that while this isn't what I expected, and it's going to take some getting used to, I love you. The real you, whatever form that takes. Tears spilled down Tim's cheeks as he pulled Sue into a tight embrace. I love you too, he whispered. Thank you for understanding. As they held each other, Tim felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew there would be challenges ahead, explaining to friends and family, navigating the complexities of his new identity. But for the first time in years, he felt truly whole. 5 years later, Tim stood in front of the mirror in the master bedroom, putting the finishing touches on his makeup. The woman who looked back at him was confident, successful, and happy. She was now a junior partner in Monica's expanding business, with 3 thriving stores under her management. Sue appeared in the doorway, smiling fondly. Ready for your big presentation, sweetheart? Tim nodded, smoothing down the front of her tailored suit. As ready as I'll ever be. Wish me luck. Sue crossed the room and placed a gentle kiss on Tim's cheek, careful not to smudge the carefully applied lipstick. You don't need luck. You've got this. As Tim walked out the door, briefcase in hand and heels clicking confidently on the pavement, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. What had begun as a desperate attempt to find employment had turned into a profound journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.